Welcome to episode 3 of the Agency Podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of the top 1% of agency owners. Today we're sitting down with Olly Hudson, an agency owner I've known since his days in university. Now Olly is the founder of Soar With Us and For You Advertising, now the largest agency group in the UK dedicated to helping scale e-commerce stores with over 90 active clients. Now, Olly joined the Affluent Academy as a uni student. Olly has since scaled his agency to over 500k per month. He's also one of our senior leaders in a new program we're launching very soon called Elite, so look out for that. And in this episode, Olly shares his secrets to agency growth, covering everything from strategic partnerships to client retention and his obsession with perfecting service delivery. You'll learn how to position your agency as a market leader, the importance of solid SOPs, and how to navigate the complex challenges of scaling. So whether you're an aspiring agency owner or a seasoned pro, this conversation is packed with actionable advice you simply cannot afford to miss. It's a rare opportunity to learn from someone who's achieved this level of success in his agency in just a few short years. So strap in and enjoy episode 3 of the Agency Podcast.
So, nice. There you go.
Let's go.
You just bought another agency, didn't you?
Yeah, we've just, about 30 days, about 2 months ago, we finished the acquisition we've been working on for about 6 to 8 months. Agency based in London called Hamby Media.
Nice.
Brought it into the Soar group, and yeah.
What was the thought process behind doing that?
I guess it was twofold. It kind of came about through a personal connection to Lucas, the founder, who was going to be on one of these, I think, in the next few weeks. Yeah. Somewhat organically came through that process of him of us having conversations around whether we entertain it, whether we look to do it. But from a strategic business perspective, the agency provides performance content, performance creative for D2C brands. So it services our ICP, our ideal clients. We were already doing a lot of work with them on a referral basis. So some of our hero case studies, the Essence for which I'm closest to being one of them, were clients where we worked with Hamby for content, and then they worked with Soar, my agency, for performance or media buying. And it just, every time that happened, we found the results were better, the process was smoother than when we worked with another business that didn't have them involved or were using a different content agency. So it just made sense. And yeah, brought them together. And
So you basically absorbed them in to expand your current offering. Presumably you were doing a bit of creative anyway. If you were working with D2C brands, did you then have to get rid of that department, or what happened? We
weren't doing creative execution. We were doing we train our team to be growth strategists rather than performance media buyers. So they work with businesses and they are very focused on creative strategy. So using data to direct clients on what they should be doing from a creative perspective. But we weren't actually executing on that. It was somewhat trying to do it without through someone else's hands, holding their hands to execute on what you were telling them to do. So it's perfect synergy of filling a gap where we were struggling to get clients to execute to the level that we needed them to get success and to continue to scale at the rate that we knew that we could if we could fill that gap. So yeah, it was very complementary. It was just bringing the business into the group, and then it's been a process and we've still not quite got to that point of really having them feel like one business, because it takes time to merge team and operations, culture, and ways of working. But hopefully over the next couple of months that'll really kind of feel like one business and one service.
I imagine the whole thing's been a bit of a process. It's been quite interesting to see it from the outside as well, because Lucas, who owns Hamby, is obviously, we've all come from a very similar space and a similar ecosystem, and so it was very full circle seeing you guys going through that process. When did you launch your agency? It was what are we talking, 5 or 6 years ago now?
Coming up to, it'll be 5 years in October, yeah. So we did it for about 4.5 now. Bootstrapped it from a PayPal loan to buying your course to I think we've got 90 people now, somewhere around that number.
Awesome.
With Lucas's agency included in that. So yeah, it's been a bit of a long journey, very full circle moment.
I bet. At what point in the agency's growth did you really feel like you were actually getting somewhere with it? Did you hit a catalyst moment where you were like, oh shit, we're actually running an agency now and not just a freelance?
I think it's when you start. I think there's 2 points of inflection. One is team. For us, it was team, like getting like a couple of killers into the business. And I feel like that's something people struggle with. And there's a difference between hiring and getting the right person in the seats. So like a lot of people hire, but then they don't do it well, and it results in like very little difference in their day-to-day workflow, and they're still basically a glorified freelancer. But we were fortunate enough, like 3 of our C-suite team were in the first 10 hires that we made. So like they've progressed up the business, and they've almost like their growth in skills and responsibility have almost like superseded the growth of our business, which is, I feel, is very rare to find that to happen, to have people who can grow with the company and move up the chain of like Matt joined as like a media buyer, then he went to like a head of, then he went to COO, and now he's going to MD, and he's like been here for 4 years, so he pretty much joined 6 months after we started. I think that was one thing, is like getting a couple of those people in, and it's like that compounding effect. It goes from being like you doing like linear one-to-one output, like you do the outreach, you sign the clients, you do the media buy, and you get paid for it, to like 2 or 3 people that doing it, and that compounding work and that like compounding impact. I think that was a really big change. And then the second one, which was a bit more recently, has been like the change in marketing and our ability to attract clients. Like it feels like if you grow an agency the right way, it can the early stage feels very like pushing a snowball up a hill. But then I feel like if you can get to a point, if you do the marketing and you do the branding and the strategy right, that you kind of crest that mountain, and then you like start to grow momentum, and then people coming to you to work with you, and people referring people, and then you've got like this ecosystem of leads that makes it feel like it's just a lot more like systematic in the way it grows.
Presumably the approach has been different for you to getting to that point where you're now spending a lot of time on brand and personal branding as well, which is something we've discussed. Like before that, what did that process look like to get you to the point? Because you've worked with some very high caliber clients, and you've built a really good client base.
It does change. Like we started, and it was very like outreach focused in the early stages. Like I think we got on when it was Instagram DMs. That was the hype.
Nice. Still is. Still works.
Yeah, I feel like outreach just goes through cycles, doesn't it? Like email will work for 6 months, then everybody will do it, then it'll stop working, then everyone will stop doing it, and it'll start working again, or the strategy within that will change. So we did a lot of that to start with, and probably got a bit lucky in places in terms of timing but then I guess you make your own luck at the same time. And yeah, it was that like scaled outreach, and then we got to a point where we started to like kind of step back and looked at our business, and we're like, we teach all of these companies to do like multi-channel growth. We teach them to like think about all of these different ways to market their business, but we don't treat our own business in the same way. So we stepped back and we're like, right, why don't we just treat our agency like we treat our clients? So like make loads of paid ad content, run ads, make personal brand content, and just try and like level up every area and treat it more like an ecosystem, and build around that and build a content marketing strategy. So it was like a move towards that like quite intentionally over time, but it does take resource and time to make that happen.
It's what I think a big area that a lot of people struggle with is they think that they have to do all of that shit from day one because they see someone like you doing it now, and what they haven't taken into consideration is that you've gone through a process of considering when is the appropriate time, or when you actually have resource and time and mental space to allocate to doing those things.
I think that's the same with that's not even just an agency, I think that's the same for every business. Like we teach e-com brands to focus on one marketing channel till they get to 7 figures. So you focus on just Facebook, and then you focus on the next channel. I think that's the same for agencies. It's like you pick one route, and it can be an element of like self-reflection of like, do I enjoy making content? Do I not, and do I do outreach instead? And then going deep into that, like specializing in becoming an expert and getting data and feedback loops going within that area. That's enough to take you to like 100K a month in agency revenue, I think.
100%. You can definitely get to 100k a month with one good channel. I think like you could argue one good channel in outbound and one good channel in inbound, like maybe just
maybe
one.
both.
And like 0 to 10 is like that throw shit at the walls and see what sticks situation. So like you kind of do everything and then you hit 10k and you've got a bit of proof of concept and you have to analyze what's actually worked and then just focus on the one thing. Whereas many people get to that 10k point and then they plateau and die because of the fact they haven't then taken that back seat and had a look at what's actually working.
Yeah, it's better to go deep in one area. Again, that's the same for an e-com brand. It's the same for probably a SaaS company. It's the same for it's like that appreciation that if it was easy to run like 5 marketing channels, then people wouldn't have like 5 separate teams to do it properly. Like we do more stuff now because we have four or five dedicated marketing hires in the business that only focus on our marketing. So it allows us to do everything, or most things. But even we don't actually do any outbound right now because we don't have the bandwidth to do it internally, which is like an interesting flip to most people because our inbound works so well. But we've just hired a head of sales, so we're now going to layer the outbound on top of that. So it's like we're still in a position where we know we can't do that well, so we don't bother yet.
Yeah, it's you always, it's like right at the start, and by the start I'm still talking like pre-10k. It's like you're desperately trying to seek opportunity, and your opportunity is so scarce, and you're just trying to find it. And then all of a sudden, it's like that switch comes, and like, opportunities in abundance. And the real challenge is knowing how to turn away opportunities so you don't screw up all the shit you've got going on at home.
Yeah, it's growing with that like LTV focus of like client retention. I'm a big believer that client retention grows agencies, not acquisition. Like you have to have the acquisition, but for us, like, we've still got some of our clients we've worked with for 3.5, 4 years, and it's like they've probably spent a couple of $100,000 with us now from an LTV perspective. I think you need to try and find in your early stages 3 or 4 of those, like people who you put a lot of time into building a relationship with, because then they like form like that backbone of revenue that provides the foundation for you to start like having the confidence to hire someone and start putting that time into other places. But yeah, like that I feel like the early stage, like you say, 1 to 10k, it was just let's try a bit of everything and you will find something that works.
But you've gone in 5 years from 0 to arguably the biggest direct-to-consumer agency in the UK, and you've done that with, correct me if I'm wrong, no understanding of the e-commerce industry before you started this agency. I mean, you started when you were in uni, right?
Yeah, I started. I was fortunate enough to do a drop shipping store with someone at uni when I was 18, and then we started the agency at like either 19 or 20, I can't remember. And then we grew it from then. So yeah, it was very like, we were very, learned everything about service delivery off a course, partly your course and then another course that doesn't exist anymore. That's just like, there used to be this really in-depth ecom Facebook ads course. Yeah. But the guys' logins have disappeared, so I can't look at it.
One of those.
And learn it all from there, and then just like application and going deep on the service delivery.
Yeah. How important have you found that the customer themselves are in that understanding of getting great at delivering service yourself? Have you independently sourced or come up with your own knowledge on how to service a direct-to-consumer brand, or have you got involved on kind of the customer side to understand their specific needs and desires and issues?
That's a good question, actually. I think we've from both, I guess, treating both in isolation. I'm involved in like e-com businesses myself, which has been especially over the last 2 years, has been huge because it's a really fast-growing e-com brand or brand group. I'm the CMO there, and we're actually building a team. Like, we're building out the internal team. We still service it from an agency perspective, but that's put me closer to like thinking like an operator, thinking like an e-com operator rather than getting a deeper appreciation for like all of the different problems and work streams that go on in that business. Whereas when you're just working with them from an agency capacity, you can be siloed into like only looking at acquisition or only looking at CRM and not having to appreciate ops, finance, products, and it is quite complex. So I think that's been really useful and a bit of like a differentiator for us in the market, and ability to talk about that experience. But I also think even from early on in our process, we've always focused on this idea of selling like a system or a process to an outcome rather than a service. So like, even if that's just like dressing up a way of doing things that other people are doing. So like, for at one stage we called it like this launch to Lightspeed program, but it was like a 7 or 8 step program for delivering like a specific outcome for an e-com business, and then that kind of cultivates a bit of like IP and trust, because when you're taking someone through that on a sales call, it feels like you've got something that other people don't have, or I feel like people trust processes more than they trust a service. So we've done that, and then now that's kind of cultivated into, because of our position in the market, we've now kind of, we're in this kind of thought leader position in where we're now sort of innovating on the way that we grow brands and like testing new approaches to media buying and content and how those two things work together. And that's really helped us over the last like 18 months kind of set ourselves apart and really grow in the D2C space.
So your core offering is productized now?
We're moving more, yeah, we've always tried to move towards that. We're in a bit of a process of like, since bringing the two businesses together, like I said, they still operate a little bit in isolation. So what we're trying to do now is like look at our client LTV over 6 to 8 months, look at our packages, like what mixture of services brings the best outcome for the business, and then align our commercial strategy around that. But it's probably going to be content and performance, but then giving that like a proprietary name. So like it'll be like your external growth division or something. And we focus very much on the process that flows within that and providing that process to the business. And that also makes it a more scalable thing, because you're providing the same way of working to every business, and we can optimize that as like a product in a way.
I think that's essential for scale, like beyond 100K, like having a repeatable process that can be, and then therefore it's like the same process that we follow with our delivery teams, right? We go from being pretty much a free-for-all as far as like company tree is concerned and structure, and then we adopt a pod system, which is a pod system is almost, it's like productizing almost within our team. And so it's exactly the same when it comes to the service. We need a repeatable process if we want to hit that large level of scale and be able to then scale ads or whatever acquisition channel we're using. And so I think it makes perfect sense, and I think beyond a certain point it is essential.
I think you have to. I think there's also that's also true of like organizational structure, like you mentioned, like the pod structure. There's a reason that businesses tend towards the same organizational structure at scale, because it's pretty much the only way to make it work. Like that whole idea of having a flat structure, once you get past like 50 people, try having a direct report structure across a flat business. It just like someone will end up having 10 direct report meetings a week, no ability to do any deep work or focused work, no leverage. So I think like there's tending towards like structure there in team, structure there in service. But I think before that, like you kind of just, it's like providing what people need really. I think there's no shame in like taking the opportunities, even if they're not an exact fit, and just focusing on getting good revenue into the business, like good clients. And even if you're doing things a little bit outside of scope, you have to do that in the early stages, over deliver.
100%. You have to just find what works so you can know what to focus on, and just fail forward with it so you can then just get rid of the stuff that isn't. What revenue level are you at the moment with across the agencies? You have 3 agencies now,
we have Soar and Hamby in a group, and then we have another one called For You, which is like a TikTok agency, and we're doing like circa $500,000 a month across those.
Yeah, and so it's interesting that you have. I mean, it's understandable with Hamby because of the fact that Hamby was its own separate entity, and now you've merged. And actually, the thought process behind that makes a lot of sense in retrospect to just focusing on one thing at a time. Because you as a team, yes, you are probably adopting and learning creative now, but you don't have to take. You can take on the mind of someone else that's already gone through and having that whole process dedicated to themselves. And so you're absorbing that. But then for you. I remember when you started that within the last couple of years, lots of agencies in a position when they're launching a new offer like that, and you jumped on the TikTok thing and did it really ahead of time, and you've absolutely nailed it there. But I'm interested to understand your thought process behind launching it as a separate entity rather than just creating a new offering within Soar.
That's a good question. That came about because Lucas, we're partners with Lucas, who owned Hamby, or still does own part of Hamby, in that business as well. We've got another business partner, Liam. That came about through like a bit kind of organic of like, we were trying to execute on TikTok for a lot of our paid media clients at Soar, but then when we were doing that, it wasn't working because none of them had good UGC content. We didn't have the bandwidth or capability or skill set in Soar within that ecosystem to build a UGC offer very quickly, but Lucas did. And Liam kind of spearheaded that from an internal perspective. So we kind of came up with that proposition of like, let's break it out. Let's leverage Lucas's expertise to build the creative offer. Let's build like a TikTok first positioning around the business. And it's worked really well. Like it's been a challenge to balance the two, and it still is. But it's kind of helped us because it's that agency, we're probably the biggest D2C TikTok agency in the UK, and we've got a really strong partnership with TikTok because of our TikTok first positioning. Like they send us a lot of work, they plug us into a lot of opportunities. So like perhaps it would have still happened, but perhaps it wouldn't have. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Maybe like we've had discussions around bringing that back into the group structure, which we may do, because myself and Joe, who also could just move our ownership back into the group and then start sharing resource, because the pipeline's all kind of, people just end up working with like two of them, or what, like we share a lot of work between them as well.
How do you compartmentalise that? How important to like internal systems and so on? Do the systems get shared between the companies? And
we do a lot of shared learning and a lot of like we can take like ways of working, like our HR processes, our like org structure, our creative systems are very similar to Hamby for like UGC, but they're also running like complete isolation of team from a day-to-day perspective. So yeah, there's it's not like copy and paste, but there's definitely shared learnings and practices taken across.
I remember the first time you showed your SOP library in a session in Tillum, which is our mastermind, and myself among everyone else, and I'm like, oh shit, man! Like this is what we should have been doing the whole time, is documenting on level, because you document on a very granular level. And that is now something that we came away from that. And I remember a conversation with Joe, my business partner, and Tom, at the time CMO. She's still, I think, CMO, but might have been CO. Anyway, had a conversation. I was like, guys, why aren't we not doing this? and then we took a complete shift in the way that we saw systems and SOPs and documentation after that, and now I've just built a library of like over 100 resources that we use, and that's something that now expresses in all the education products that we teach as well. How much of an unfair advantage do you think that gave you, and what do you think have been the benefits from your end of view, that kind of rigorous documentation from day one?
I think it was huge. I don't actually know where I picked that up from, like that. I think it was from an internship I did at uni. I went and worked for like a SaaS startup, and they just documented everything. And then I just kind of was like, oh, this is how you run a business, and we was like, well, let's just do that for us. But I remember like when I went to work there as an intern, it was an Asana board. You're onboarded into the business, and there was like 3 weeks of work, and every day was a document with like exactly what you should do, links to everything, videos, and I was like, just knowing that experience for me going into that role made it where they basically just didn't need to speak to me for 3 weeks, just left me to do my work every day I came in, because I just had all the answers to my questions, or like it minimized the need for communication and questions. So I think like taking that and applying it for us, it made it a lot more like repeatable, predictable, scalable. It made like hiring easier. And we're constantly continuing to grow that right now. Like it's something we put a lot of time in. Like we've got 2 people in the business that pretty much just focus on operations and SOPs and like building that. And it's an ongoing process of refinement and reviewing and refinement, but I think it made it really, really like a lot easier to provide repeatable services to clients, because again, that's what you're trying to do. Like,
it really is just it's just another validation that every part of high-end agency scale, beyond a certain point, is about building repeatable process. It's repeatable team hiring. It's repeatable
process.
It's repeatable services, repeatable process in everything. And so, and also, like, we start off by leveraging our own time and just as much as we can. Then it's all about leverage of other people's time, but not just gaining more hours, but the quality of those hours. And so, having all of these SOPs and training resources just enables you to skip so much of that.
I think it's those like people, processes, and positioning. Because I think you also need to think about your positioning in the market as you get bigger. Like, how do you become like a brand rather than an agency?
So that's something that you guys have done incredibly well, and I think many people know your name in the UK. Certainly in the UK direct-to-consumer e-commerce space, there are not many brand owners who are in the online ether on social media that haven't heard of your agency, and so I suppose I would love to know what, from your perspective, what measures you've put into play, what strategy you've put into play to try and position yourself as an industry leader, which you have managed to achieve, and how then other people would be able to apply that regardless of being direct to consumer, etc.
Yeah, it's a very intentional process. I think it starts with like how do you cultivate like a market leader positioning, and I think that starts with a very clear understanding of like what you're trying to achieve, like what's your vision or mission for the company. And we align our whole business around like this idea of we're trying to build the next generation of D2C brands and the people who will go on to lead those brands from an internal perspective. And then everything is aligned to that. So like the way we position our marketing, the way we position our tone of voice, our content, is all around like empowering and equipping brand owners with information to allow them to grow their business. And it's like pairing that with this concept that Alex Hormozi always pushes, which is like give away the strategy and sell the implementation. Like, we're not, the people who we're selling to are cash rich and time poor, so it doesn't matter if I give them a 200-point checklist of how to build the perfect D2C Facebook ad. They're not going to go and do it because they don't have the time, but it proves to them that we know how to do it very well. So they then they sell themselves on us as a business and a service provider. So I think it's a bit of that. It's a bit of like sitting back and be like, what am I trying to build? What do I want to be known for? How do I want that to trickle down into tone of voice and visual positioning? And then aligning like your decks, your marketing resource, your personal brand, whatever those channels you choose, to that vision and mission and to that ICP that you're trying to target. And it will take time, because to build a brand takes time in any industry, and to build that positioning takes time.
Yeah, 100%. And I think at the forefront, client results have to be there in the first place for people to even want to get those resources from you and even want to learn from you initially, which I think is like, that's catalyst number one, isn't it? Like getting results for an industry, and then you build that internal confidence that you know your shit, and then you can educate on that. I mean, it's been my entire funnel for 7 years now.
It's a huge part of brand as well. Is like, especially D2C for us, we always think of it as like a bit of a small bubble, especially in this country. So it's like, if you're not providing great experience to people will know other founders. And like, it doesn't matter how great you look on a social media, if everybody in the background when they meet each other are like, they're crap, they burn loads of our money, like that destroys everything you've done on the front end. So it has to be underpinned by like great service delivery and results consistently.
That is, it's that unquantifiable. It's the I'm sure it's Hormozi that speaks about this, but it's the it's like the hidden voice. It's the hidden hand, and which is your reputation that you have. And I mean, it's interesting. I was just in the gym even just a couple of weeks ago, and some guy asked to have a meeting with me who started an Amazon brand. And he was like, "Oh, I'm just starting to work with this agency," and it was actually a couple of months ago now. And it was you guys, Soar, and they're a pet brand. You probably have worked with many of them. And his perception of your agency was extremely high, and I think that is such an important thing that people don't really consider is what is my impact on an individual industry, and how am I perceived in the space. I think lots of people don't understand how in control of outside perception they actually are, but also then by that same light, how delicate outside perception can be within the space, certainly within marketing.
Yeah, it's a constant challenge. It's a really big challenge as well as you start to get bigger, because it's like it becomes harder to consistently provide that, or it becomes harder to, like, what's the word, like delegate like a high level of care and responsibility down a business. So it's like something you have to cultivate in a culture, like this strive for excellence and this like care for the brand that everybody works for, and that like shared commitment to providing the best possible service, because obviously you're never going to get an exec that cares as much about your business as the founder, but then obviously you're going to have more and more of those people come into your business as it grows bigger. So yeah, it's got to be really intentional and constantly top of mind.
Would you say that to you has been the most important thing from going from 10 to, let's say, 100K initially per month in service, or if not?
Yeah, service delivery. Like I think if you can get to like maybe 20K a month, I think you're almost guaranteed to get to like 100K a month if you really provide an incredible level of service. Like, even if like, just from it might take you a lot longer to get there, but if you can provide a really high level of service, take those businesses on a journey, have those customers become advocates of you, like spread the word about you as a business. Like, it might take 6 months for them to find you a referral, but like they probably will find one. Like, I'm not saying you should just rely on that. You should be doing the outreach, you should be doing the business development, but I think if you just really nail service in that kind of 20 to 100K, like most of the things you will find a way to make them work, and you will probably get some referrals. You'll be able to push your case studies out.
Yeah,
your sales process will become easier.
Even more than just client referrals. So, like, I think that the biggest key from 100K plus is strategic partnerships. And like, to get strategic partnerships, it's like you have to be seen as being elite at delivering a specific service in an industry. Because if not, these companies that are already established who have access to your ICP don't want to associate with you.
Yeah.
And I think that is really one of the biggest secrets that large agencies hold near and dear, and no one wants to give out the partnerships that they've got. Referral partnerships just excel you. Like, I mean, you've got TikTok referring you partners.
We've got TikTok, we've got Triple Whale, which is probably one of the biggest DC unicorns. Like,
you just won their Agency of the Year award.
Yeah, won their award, and then they send us work. But like you say, like, by referring someone to us, they're almost like referring their reputation to us. So they're not going to do that if they don't know we're good. And that's all. That's not even just SaaS or tech or platform partners. That can also be like agency partners. I think a really good way to grow a business at like 50, 100K a month range is to find an agency with complementary but not conflicting service, and just set up a partnership and send each other work, because you basically then get two pipelines.
We built an entire partnership. I don't know what you do for partnership management, but we built an entire partnership management system, like a whole outreach system for like agency partners, with a dedicated pipeline there, and we record the relationships between each of those partnerships and so on. It's something that people overlook. The amount of time that you spend on outreach to clients, you spend the same amount of time if you've got the resources to. When you're beyond a certain revenue level, if you actually have the team to do so, if you dedicate a bit of time to your team to be outreaching to other potential partners as well, like, the ROI is humongous.
Yeah, I even think you could go after bigger agencies in the same vertical. Like, we've referred, I think Freddie, our head of sales, has sent, I think probably about 100K a month of content service to another content
to smaller
agency.
brands, for smaller brands
to an agency in Ireland. That the brands don't qualify to work with Hamby, but they do qualify to work with them, but we don't have another solution for it, so he just sends them their way. And it's like that's a good example of tapping into our ecosystem, because we get a lot of leads that are just don't make sense for us to work with from a margin perspective, but they're going to go work with someone, and like we might as well set them up with a good partner. And I think that would probably be true in most verticals.
Yeah. But the key to that is initially making sure that service is nailed
It's really
down.
good because they're not going to give you work more than once if you mess it up. Because again, it comes back to, if we refer them to them, they're still going to come back to us and be like, I went to work with the person you referred me to and it was terrible. So kind of that brand piece again, like you need to think about that. But yeah, I think that partnerships is huge.
Yeah, I think that partnerships and referrals is how you solidify your, like, a guarantee that you're going to be able to bring in an influx of clients every single month. And so it comes, outbound is something that I do believe at scale outbound can be really valuable, but I think more like a select, more purposeful outbound is more intentional. So reaching out to, maybe you pick a pool of 20 Halo clients every month and you really put a lot of attention into them. You might send them direct mail, you might call them, you might outreach them on social, but you personalize that like properly. And really all that is a relationship piece rather than a, hey, do you want to jump on a call and have a sale with me? It's not putting in some elaborate offer or something to try and pull those people in. I think there's a lot of value there. But if your agency hits 100K and you're not growing sustainably and offsetting churn more so through inbound and referrals, then something's fundamentally home with the service itself.
You need to pivot to focus on. I know people who have grown, and I still know a group of guys who do a lot of basically only do outbound, or they've just started to layer like personal brand on top of it. But outbound does work. It's just like, I think everybody tries to do it low effort, but it's like everybody's doing it. How do you innovate and how do you appear differently to other people?
I think one of the biggest issues is everybody falls, and this is something that I think you guys have tested, and we certainly have tested, but we've never really fallen completely in the trap of, is like getting in this offer race of just falling straight to the bottom. I know we've both dabbled there with very little success, because actually I think it fundamentally goes, at least to speak for myself, it goes against what I believe in. But many agencies think, okay, I want to outreach, or I'm going to try and acquire clients, or I want to make my service look as good as possible, and therefore I'm going to say, I'm going to double your revenue in this period, I'm going to do this, I'm going to give you a guarantee of 5x ROAS or something ridiculous. And actually then the offer loses all meanings and just becomes a hook, and then everybody gets dequalified on the call. That's going to end very soon, I believe, and I also think that has a hugely negative impact on the perception of your agency from day one and can get in the way.
Yeah, I think it also just brings you the lowest quality of client that are always the hardest to get results for. And like you're capturing upfront value, but then causing you like long-term stress of working with someone who's probably not a great fit and probably asks for 50 times more than someone who is a good fit and has a good business. So I think
you guys might still do this, but I remember, you could probably remember back in the day in the original social media marketing school in the sales script that I used to teach in there, we used to say to every client, oh look, month 1 you're probably not going to make any money. Month 2 we're going to start to optimize the ads and get and start to find the winnings, and then month 3 we're going to start scaling up and get you some good return on investment, and then we're away. And that just got lost somewhere over the years, where it became that everyone on sales calls just started over-promising and just thinking that they had to be like, yeah, no, it's going to be great. And yes, I know that other agency you worked with is shit, but it's because of X, Y, Z reason, and we're going to get you return on investment straight away. And that became the new norm. And then I just think we could this created, or I say we, I mean collectively the agency space just created this distrust and distaste towards agencies and what they stand behind. And so when you come against that, and you're the one that's actually pushing transparent and saying no, that's not how it's going to be, it's a different game.
It's like expectation management, isn't it? Which is the core of everything. Like from a fulfillment perspective, is like under promise and over deliver, but everybody tends towards over promising and under delivering. And I think
through desperation.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we do a lot of that. Like there's a lot of e-com brands that are, especially at the moment in the industry, that are in like really unhealthy cash positions because we've gone through this phase of like high funding, where you can run at like lose money on first order, make it up on LTV of customers, but there's a real big pivot towards first order profitability right now. So there's like quite a lot of times where we're having to get on calls and be like, right, your business right now isn't working and it's going to take us a while to fix that. You're going to have to expect to go on this journey for like 3 to 6 months with us, but we'll get there. But it's all about, again, managing that expectation. And I think, I see so many ads for e-com brands being very, very, like, they're all very like guarantee led or like promise led, we've again flipped that, and we're like, let's just lead by giving away really high value resources and try and build trust in people first through content.
And also just like rationally, you don't need to tell someone you're going to get them. Let's say the promise was, I'm going to get you 2x ROAS or whatever that is. You don't need to promise someone a specific result if you can just show them that you've already done it for 10 other people. And so like if you just lead forward with great case studies, and the problem is most people compensate with an outrageous offer, they compensate for not having good case studies, which is a problem within itself. But if you just focus on getting those case studies and documenting that process as well, then I think that's really the key. I noticed you guys started doing some in-person interviews with clients as well. It's something that we've been trying to do as much as possible. It's hard to find the time, dedicated resources, and make it work.
And to get people to agree to do it, and fit that in their calendar. But that's great.
Yeah,
we just redone our deck and things, and it's like just bring in like a high variety of case studies forward that cover like different niches, different starting positions and end positions, and different journeys of revenue size, just to show that a lot of our sales cycle ends with people wanting to speak to businesses or see businesses that we've worked with or have worked with that have got similar problems to them, whether that's they're a subscription brand or a pet brand, or they're at like 8 figures or the early like mid 7 figures. Like they want to know that you could solve the problem for someone who's or have already solved the problem for someone in a similar position. So I think that's really true, like having that proof.
Yeah.
Which ties back to why service delivery is so important in the early stages, because you, like if I was advising someone in the e-com space who's like in that 20 to 50k mark, it's like get some really good case studies, then go after businesses in a similar space. So whether that's like a subscription-based health brand, like if you've done it for 1 or 2 brands really well, then probably tailor a lot of your processes towards finding more brands that are doing that have similar problems, that are at similar stages.
I think that's applicable to any agency, regardless of direct to consumer. Like it's if you're working with us, if you've got on your client base, that's why it's so important to constantly be analysing our client base. We just identify which of the clients we're getting the best results for and which are working the best, and just hone in on that one thing. And like in like lead generation, it's very difficult to scale a business. Whilst you can scale an agency, but you can't remain very profitable. Your profit margins might drop down to anything from 20 to 30% at scale, if you are still multi-niched in lead gen. And so I think like, and even like in direct, it's interesting, the direct to consumer space, lots of like, I think most direct to consumer agencies niche down in service rather than in actual industry itself. Whereas in lead generation, I think it's like essential that you niche down in niche rather than in service. So it's like, okay, I work with health businesses, or I work with professional services, etc. Whereas in direct to consumer, it's much, I think there's a lot more acceptance around niching down in service, because I think the businesses themselves require so many different services in order for them. There's so many more moving parts than the simplicity of marketing on a lead generation side.
I think that's true, yeah. I think you're also getting, I'm not that experienced in lead gen, but from my understanding, you're getting often more involved in like sales cycles, and like it's more like an end-to-end business development process versus us that's just selling a product and then everything else.
It does have to be now, but you could argue that it's exactly the same thing, because you're getting heavily involved. You get much more heavily involved in strategy,
right? Yeah,
and so
like finance and all sorts,
which I think is essential as an agency. Initially, that's very intimidating when you look to start an agency and you're like, okay, I'm just going to offer this local service to local businesses and get started. But I do think to get any level of significant scale, you do have to offer a holistic solution to somebody.
I went to I think it was I went to Stephen Bartlett talk, and he talked through this principle that like exactly what you just said there, and it's how I think we've differentiated ourselves. Is like he was saying that if you try and become like top 1% in one thing, so that could be like top 1% in Facebook ads for a lead gen vertical, it's really hard to become top 1% in just that thing, because the depth of skills that people have is massive. But when you start stacking, if you become top 10% in Facebook ads, top 10% in follow-up emails, and top 10% in training sales teams for that lead gen vertical, it puts you in the top 1% of that industry because you've stacked these three complementary and very similar skills. I feel like that's what we did. We didn't just focus on being like really good at paid media. It was like paid and then creative strategy and then post-click landing page experience, and now it's finance. And it's like that bringing those things together differentiates us from the other agencies that are just focused on being like linearly good at paid or like really good at creative. So I think that's like what you say, like it's being that more holistic growth partner.
I think if you can give your clients some sort of epiphany or realization about their business that they didn't realize themselves, first of all, which is very difficult to achieve as an agency that just offers an ad service. So, if, for example, if you're offering you're getting involved in the finances and you can identify some specific KPIs that you measure that are really important that the business isn't considering themselves, and you change the way they look and think about their business, that's when you really become an authority, and then that's when you just reduce churn to near nothing, because you become irreplaceable in the eyes of the customer.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what we've tried to. It's like just becoming more and more indispensable, and that again, I think that's what I meant earlier by like in that early stage, like people. When clients start asking you to do things that are a bit outside of scope, like a lot of the time, I think that's a good thing, and you should do it because it embeds you, as long as they're not taking you for a ride and asking you to do 1,000,001 things, but it's like it'll embed you in that relationship. They'll then provide the backbone for your business because they're not going to go anywhere, and you can grow off that stable foundation. So I think that's definitely true.
So you've got to the point that you're in right now. What is the plan for the next few years? Do you want to stay in the agency long term? What does that look like?
Our current, breaking it into different time frames, the next 6 months is very focused on bringing the two companies really close together, like commercially, team, strategically, position, and just continue to grow like revenue behind the service. I think next year it's about like cracking the US market, whether that's through just scaling our marketing more or whether it's through like maybe acquiring another agency out there. We're transitioned into that group structure, and the focus is to grow the enterprise value of the group. We probably will eventually sell it, like 5 year time horizon, maybe a bit longer.
Do you have a goal, or is it just a time-based goal rather than financial?
The goalposts move. It's difficult to set like a target goal. We had one in mind, but like we're pretty confident we're going to reach that now. So it's like we need to like reset what that looks like. But no, it's more time based. And as long as we're having fun and enjoying it, like we just keep going until we don't. So like we're looking to expand the group into like other agency offers, maybe some other acquisitions, all around that D2C e-com space because it's where we have the most domain expertise. Nice. So it could be like SaaS, it could be something else. But generally just enjoy it and keep building it.
Nice.
Keep building.
Nice. That's the goal. We've got to enjoy the process because it gets pretty. I think
Can't enjoy every day.
No, I was going to say I think expectations it's not what you think it's going to be coming into it, is it? Like you think that business is so glamorized, and especially like. I would say agencies, but actually even when agencies were glamorized, it was always the idea of starting an agency because you never really had a measure of who was doing really well. This online agency space has really kind of built itself from the ground up. And kind of we are the examples of what it's actually like to be in that position. But I think the expectations of what the company is going to be are very different. I mean, you can build yourself into a position like yourself and like myself, where you're out of the agency and you're not spending much day to day in the agency itself. But you can't stop yourself mentally being there every single day. And I think that's a biggie.
Yeah, there's still problems every day.
Yeah.
Everybody has the same problems though. Like everybody loses clients. Yeah. Everybody's team members. There's an issue with a team member. It's just, and a lot of the time, the people at the very top have 10 times more issues than yourself. So it is important about like positioning yourself in the where you want to be in the business from like an enjoyment perspective.
Yeah.
That's what a team will do.
And you get a little bit of time to do other stuff. For example, you're coming in and you're going to be doing some mentorship inside of with existing agency owners, which is awesome. What was your motive behind saying yes to doing that when I approached you to come and get involved?
I like doing education stuff with people. Like I quite enjoy. I've always been quite an open book with, and I guess if people ask me for advice on something, I will tell them like show them what we're doing, tell them what we're doing. Very open book policy, and like I like helping people find those, like you said, like those like eureka kind of moments where they're like, oh, I should be looking at it that way. I think that's, yeah, I just enjoy that process through the masterminds, and I never really had a forum to do it on like a big scale, so I think it provides that. So yeah, excited to like getting stuck into that this week and start to support some of the people on the journey.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be a journey for sure. It's gonna be exciting. Any final words of advice for anybody that's yet to hit that 100K a month point, that's already got proof of concept in the agency?
Other than join the elite course, I think, yeah, focus. I think like comes down to that focus. Like, don't get distracted by a million and one shiny things. Like, go deep on one or two areas. Like, not every lever is equal in a business. Like, focus on one outreach strategy or two outreach strategies and go very deep on that, and that will really support with that growth, and then get the right people in the right seats as soon as you can.
Great advice. And I think what's even better about that advice is it's for the last 12 to 24 months, I've just been compulsively obsessed with creating this program out with the one thing in mind of how can I get people out of the busy world that they're in and into just thinking about one thing that they need to be focused on in the agency, which is why we built that TILS framework out, the track, identify, leverage, systemize, where we just track everything that's happening right now. Because like we said, we throw shit at the wall, we see what sticks, and then we identify what actually is working, but actually, most importantly, what isn't necessarily working in those pillars and those key channels that we've got running. And then we just focus on a specific leverage point, and we keep repeating that process until we hit the point of scale. And I think that really truly is, in retrospect, the thing that certainly got me to over 100K a month. And with every successful agency owner I speak to, it's exactly the same thing. It's hyper focus.
Yeah, repetition and focus on one or two things. So yeah, I think that I've seen like the stuff you built in there. So excited for people to get stuck in.
Yeah,
man. A lot of juicy resources and ways of working.
Awesome. Cool, man.
Cheers. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Enjoyed.
For the invite.